When it comes to the doctrine of sola scriptura, there is often confusion as to what is precisely meant. Many think that to believe in Scripture alone is to reject the significance of tradition. However, as we will see, both Scripture and tradition equally represent the teaching of the apostles, with Scripture referring to the apostolic teaching delivered through written documents, and tradition referring to that same apostolic teaching delivered through oral transmission. Because the Scriptures were not readily accessible to most Christians during the first several centuries, and because literacy rates were very low, most early Christians were forced to rely on the oral teachings of the apostles, which were passed down through the most ancient churches. The fact that the gospel was first proclaimed orally by the Lord's disciples, then subsequently handed down for its preservation as divine scripture for all to have, is clearly attested to by Irenaeus, who stated, "We have learned from none others the plan of our salvation than from those through whom the gospel has come down to us, which they did at one time proclaim in public, and at a later period by the will of God handed down to us in the Scriptures, to be the ground and pillar of our faith." Those who subscribe to sola scriptura, like Irenaeus, simply believe that the plan of our salvation was fully handed down to us in the Scriptures, which serve as the ground and pillar of our faith. This view maintains that the Scriptures contain within them the complete teaching of the apostles, which they did initially proclaim publicly to all assemblies around the world with respect to salvation. This view is again in contrast to the Catholic and Orthodox view, which asserts that within the oral teachings of the apostles, i.e. tradition, there existed additional crucial knowledge not explicitly articulated for us in the Scriptures. However, in his treatise against the Gnostics of his day, Irenaeus once again refutes this notion when he says, "When, however, they are confuted from the Scriptures, they turn around and accuse these same Scriptures as if they were not correct, nor of authority, and assert that they are ambiguous, and that the truth cannot be extracted from them by those who are ignorant of tradition, for they allege that the truth was not delivered by means of written documents." Contrary to the Orthodox and Catholic view today, Irenaeus asserts that because the Scriptures are not ambiguous or incomplete, the truth can be fully extracted from them by those who are ignorant of tradition, meaning that the fullness of the faith was plainly and completely delivered through the written documents of the apostles for all to understand. Elsewhere, Irenaeus also gives us key insight into this topic when he states, "For how should it be if the apostles themselves had not left us writings? Would it not be necessary in that case to follow the course of the tradition which they handed down to those to whom they did commit the churches?" Notice Irenaeus says that it would only be necessary to follow the oral tradition handed down by the apostles if they had not left us their writings. Again, we see that tradition was only relevant during the early days of the church when the written documents were still spreading, and thus we are to understand that there is nothing contained in the apostolic tradition which has not been handed down to us in the Scriptures.